Welcome to Six Path Weeb. This isn't just another channel, this is where alternate timelines unlock, forbidden jutsu are theorized, and fanfics are reimagined with precision. Today's scenario. What if Naruko was Madara reincarnated? A fusion of chaos and legacy. The will of fire meets the shadow of the Uchiha. Disclaimer, the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, initiate sequence. Let's begin. Konoha. Let go of your grasp on this world. It is not the world that restrains you. It is your own grip that keeps you grounded. Why be the architect of your own limitation? Clear your heart. Release the illusion of permanence. This world is but a dream. A canvas defined by what you believe it to be. Why accept only fragments of truth? Free your mind. Let your spirit float beyond the veil. Perceive the world not as it is, but as it could be. Why stay tethered to a dimension incomplete? Free your essence. Become limitless. These were the words Toby carried in his heart, the echo of enlightenment granted to him through the ancient teachings of Madara. Only when he had emptied his soul of burdens had he come to understand the nature of reality, not as fixed, but as fluid. His Sharingan had evolved, no longer just a tool of perception, but an eye that shaped the very dimension he inhabited. His heart once trembled when he thought of the past, of cherished friends like Rin, but he had learned to look beyond pain. Under Madara's guidance, he had unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan, a vision that allowed him to bend the threads of existence. This evolution came not from darkness, but from awakening, a spiritual recognition of the world's deeper fabric. Now, trained and prepared, Toby stood on the threshold of a new mission. He would not cause harm, but rather redirect the flow of fate. His goal, to harness the power of the tailed beast and bring about a new, balanced realm. He appeared at the front gates of the Hokage's tower, swirling into presence like a whisper in the wind. Though still a young adult, he moved with the grace of a master, cloaked in robes that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. With quiet confidence, he approached the doors. Let go of your grasp. He softly repeated, touching the polished mask that covered his face. Release the illusion. The guards stationed at the entrance saw him, reacting swiftly to the unfamiliar presence. Their expressions sharpened in readiness. Without drawing a weapon, Toby raised a single hand and the air around him shimmered, creating a gentle ripple as if reality itself bent. As the guards advanced, their movements passed through him, like wind through mist. They stumbled forward, confused and unharmed, glancing back in astonishment. Toby, still calm, phased forward into the hallway, his presence almost invisible to the naked eye. A third guard stepped forward, more seasoned than the others, his hands firm on his tools. Despite his years, he hesitated. Toby floated closer, stepping partially into a separate dimension, his own unique plane of movement, where time moved like a slow river. He reappeared behind the guard and, with a flick of his wrist, extended a glowing katana-like energy projection, not made to harm, but to disconnect the guard's spiritual energy from conflict. The man dropped into a serene sleep, peaceful and untouched, as though lulled by an ancient lullaby. Toby turned his masked gaze forward. He recalled his days as a student, his memories of Kakashi, of times gone by. But those were echoes. Today, he moved not in vengeance, but in purpose. He ascended the stairs, floating like a shadow blessed by moonlight. More ninja awaited, this time wearing the masks of the Anbu Black Ops, elite defenders of the village. But they, too, hesitated not in fear, but in instinct. One unleashed a fire-style technique. Flaming spheres of energy darted toward Toby. Calmly, he opened a small portal, drawing the fire into his dimensional space. It vanished as if absorbed into a peaceful ocean, leaving only stillness behind. Two Anbu appeared behind him, striking with precision, but once again, Toby remained intangible. He chuckled softly, not in mockery, but in gentle amusement. Their determination was admirable. With a wave, he opened another dimensional rift. The two were gently pulled inside, landing in a tranquil mirror world where no harm could reach them. They would awaken moments later, unharmed and puzzled, in a place of safety. The last Anbu on the stairway stood firm, but for just a second, hesitation appeared. Toby saw it. I have come to rewrite the world, Toby said kindly, his voice like a song carried on twilight. Not to destroy, but to uplift. This reality can be renewed. He vanished once more into his ethereal realm, then reappeared before the final guard. Rather than striking, he placed a hand over the Anbu's chest, and a gentle glow spread outward, placing the ninja into a quiet dream state. This was not a battle, but a transition. He moved forward toward the Hokage's office. Along the way, more ninja had been drawn into calming illusions, each gently set aside, unharmed, their spirits untouched. Toby never intended to cause harm. He was past that. He sought only peace, a world made anew. At the last doorway stood two Chunin, eyes wide, but not in fear, in wonder. One, unsure, dropped his weapon and fled, only to be gently swept into Toby's secondary realm, floating among dreamlike stars. The other remained, fists clenched, determined. "Please, step aside," Toby said softly, no anger in his tone. "This world will not end. It will simply become whole." The guard, awestruck, slowly lowered his arms. Toby gave a respectful nod, then walked into the final chamber. The air was still. The time had come. Not to conquer, but to begin again. Toby gently shook his head and snapped his fingers once more. A moment later, the previously absent ninja appeared in front of him, dazed and confused. Before the ninja could utter a word, Toby shifted his focus, gently phasing out of the current dimension, entering a translucent, shimmering version of the real world. Without interacting with the remaining guard, Toby glided effortlessly forward through the shimmering landscape, eventually arriving at the Hokage's office. In a blink, he transitioned back into the solid world. Empty of purpose, drifting in the shadows, Toby murmured as his form settled into the office. "Now I arrive, quiet and unseen. I've come seeking." To his surprise, the Hokage's seat was empty. Instead, an older man with dark hair and sharp, watchful eyes sat behind the desk. Toby raised an eyebrow, he had expected someone else. Clearly, the Hokage was elsewhere. The older man eyed him calmly, unfazed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice firm and composed. Toby didn't answer immediately. He stepped forward, half slipping in and out of the shimmering dimension, his movements silent and graceful. Hidden kunai shot from the shadows, passing harmlessly through him. Untouched and undeterred, he continued approaching. "I am no one," Toby finally said. "But in a way, that makes me everyone. This world will soon transform. So tell me, Danzo, where are the Hokage and her family?" Danzo said nothing, but Toby had no intention of waiting. Focusing his chakra, he activated a powerful eye technique. His Sharingan shifted and evolved into a more intricate pattern, the Mangekyu. Koto Amatsukami. As he used the technique, his energy flared. The Mangekyu allowed him to peer deep into the mind before him, uncovering truths hidden beneath layers of thought. Though it required immense control and drained his chakra heavily, Toby used it without hesitation. He needed answers now. After just a moment, he had what he sought. "A cave near the village?" he repeated, clearly amused. "So that's where the Hokage is." Danzo looked stunned. Toby could see it in the way his expression tightened. "No need to worry," Toby said lightly. "You won't interfere. This whole setup, it's a stage, isn't it? You want to become Hokage yourself." Danzo's eyes narrowed. "Who are you really?" he asked, this time with more urgency. Toby tilted his head slightly, the corner of his mask catching the light. "First the Senju, then the Uchiha, and now the Hyuga? Your desire for control overshadows your original purpose. You claim to seek peace, but your path is short-sighted." He turned, now facing away. His voice softened, no longer sharp, but with an air of certainty. "I carry the vision of Madara Uchiha. And through that vision, the world will change." With a final snap of his fingers, he disappeared, leaving behind only silence. Far from Konoha, a new arrival. Toby's timing was precise, almost too perfect. As he appeared in the quiet room, the area outside had already been neutralized by his advanced spatial techniques. Inside, a peaceful moment had just begun. Kushina and her husband were holding their newborn child, Naruko, for the very first time. The red-haired kunoichi had just given birth, and that meant the spiritual seal that safeguarded the Nine Tails was now at its weakest. Toby found it peculiar that anyone would seal such immense power into a woman, given the unpredictable nature of childbirth, but he wasn't here to question history, he was here with a goal. He didn't waste time with dramatic speeches or confrontation. He had originally prepared to engage the fourth Hokage during the delivery, but now that Naruko had been born, there was no need for distractions. His objective was clear: locate and control the Nine Tails. "Congratulations," he said calmly, announcing his presence with eerie timing. Both Kushina and Minato turned sharply toward him in alarm, surprised that he had appeared without a sound. Toby's masked face tilted slightly, his red Sharingan eyes swirling hypnotically. Before they could react further, Toby activated his visual technique and projected his consciousness into Kushina's spiritual space, an inner world that resembled a dim, winding passageway. Ahead of him stood massive, towering gates glowing with ethereal energy. These were the seals that contained the great spirit of the nine-tailed fox. Normally, the gates were reinforced with a special tag that only the host, Kushina, could manage. But during childbirth, the barrier weakened, making it possible for the spirit to briefly stir within her subconscious. The opening was narrow, but to someone like Toby, it was enough. As he stepped forward, he heard a low, rhythmic sound, deep, heavy breathing. The kind that could only come from a being of legendary size and power. The air trembled as a distant rumble echoed around him. Then came the growl. Rounding the bend, he saw it, the nine tails, bound by glowing chakra chains that held it firmly in place. It struggled, but the chains were deeply infused with Kushina's chakra. A voice called out behind him. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Kushina demanded, appearing between him and the powerful fox. She stood with determination, despite her exhaustion, hands held in a practice seal position. Toby raised an eyebrow beneath his mask. "Impressive," he admitted. "Managing spiritual control while giving birth. You're stronger than most." Kushina didn't respond kindly. "State your business. Now." "I'm afraid this night is going to get even more difficult," he replied, beginning to channel his chakra. Slowly, he removed his mask, revealing a face Kushina hadn't seen in years. Her eyes widened. "Obito? Uchiha? Is that really you?" Behind her, the nine tails flinched slightly, as though recognizing the power hidden behind his crimson gaze. "Those eyes. Kushina, focus." The creature's voice boomed, noticing Toby's intent. But it was already too late. Toby's Mangekyo Sharingan ignited, glowing fiercely as he unleashed a powerful spatial technique. "Kamui," he shouted, and a swirling portal opened above the nine tails. In a moment, the great fox began to vanish, drawn toward the vortex. Despite its struggle, the seal's temporary weakness allowed it to be pulled away into a sealed space beyond this world, one created by Toby himself. Back in the physical world, Toby nearly lost his balance. Containing a being of such magnitude took immense focus and energy, and his chakra reserves had been stretched to their limit. The room returned to view. Minato was now positioned protectively in front of Kushina and their newborn, Naruko, who had begun to cry softly. Kushina, still breathless, looked up. "Minato, be careful. He just invaded my inner world. He took the nine tails. That's Obito Uchiha, your former student." Minato froze in disbelief. "Obito? That can't be. He was gone years ago." Just as he tried to make sense of the situation, he moved, fast. In a flash, Minato closed the distance between them, his kunai aimed at Toby's mask. The strike was fast and precise. The blade chipped Toby's mask, forcing him to dodge back quickly, half phasing into space to recover. Minato narrowed his eyes. "It really is you." As a fragment of his mask fell to the floor, Toby looked back at his former teacher with unreadable emotion. "It's been a long time, Minato-sensei," he said, voice calm, if distant. "But I don't belong to that name anymore." Minato's voice softened slightly, a single tear escaping. "I'm just relieved that I haven't lost all of my students." Toby's expression hardened at those words. His past no longer mattered, he had a new path now. A new mentor, a new reason to reshape the world. "Take care of your village, old friend," he said, and with a final surge of energy, he disappeared into thin air. He didn't hear what Minato whispered next. Nor did he look back at the small bundle nestled in Kushina's arms, a baby girl named Naruko, whose story had only just begun. Elsewhere. When Toby re-emerged into the world, he collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. His fingertips brushed the cold stone beneath him, grounding him in the present. Despite his fatigue, a wide grin spread across his masked face. He had done it. He hadn't failed his mentor. "You've returned." Toby looked up to see none other than Madara Uchiha, seated regally on a stone chair deep within the remote, shadowy cavern. "Master," Toby responded with quiet reverence, not waiting for a prompt. "I have succeeded. The nine tails has been secured and held within the void." Though part of him longed for praise, perhaps even a smile, Madara merely nodded. "Excellent. I expected nothing less from my most devoted student." That simple acknowledgement felt more rewarding than any applause. Toby had spent a lifetime being underestimated, until he met Madara Uchiha. The elder had seen potential in him, had trained him rigorously, and entrusted him with monumental tasks. This recognition meant everything. "And your mask?" Madara asked, noting Toby had returned uncovered. "Has the hidden leaf discovered your identity?" Toby lowered his head. "Master. I was unable to contain the fourth Hokage. After securing the 9 tails in the void, I was too drained. The fourth shattered my mask. Only he and Lady Kushina saw my face. I am deeply sorry." Madara shook his head and waved off the apology. With a slow and deliberate effort, he rose from his seat. "Stand, my apprentice," he commanded gently, walking toward him. "You have not failed. Your primary mission was a success. The Uchiha legacy remains strong through your efforts." Toby stood, his heart lightened by the words. A single tear escaped, he didn't try to hide it. Madara's faith in him had never wavered. As the elder approached, his long white hair trailing behind, it was clear how fragile his form had become with age. Time was not on Madara's side. "Do you have the energy to cast me into the void?" Madara asked, resting a hand on Toby's shoulder. "I wish to confront the 9 tails now, while strength remains. Wait 5 minutes, then retrieve me." Toby nodded quickly, igniting his chakra once more. His eyes activated the Mangekyo Sharingan as he focused on Madara. "Good luck, sensei." Kamui. A dark sphere formed above Madara. In mere moments, the elder's image flickered and vanished into the void where the 9 tails was sealed. As soon as Madara disappeared, Toby collapsed again, overwhelmed by exhaustion. He clutched at his face as the strain from using his visual technique took a heavy toll. His vision blurred, even with a transplanted Sharingan, his eyesight continued to decline rapidly. These powerful eyes gave him near divine abilities, but at a cost. Unlike Madara, Toby lacked a sibling whose eyes could grant him an eternal solution. He would have to rely on the remaining Sharingan stored carefully over the years. 5 minutes passed. Toby focused once more, gathering enough chakra to bring Madara back. His heart pounded, he understood the gravity of this moment. The fate of the world was in flux. Madara Uchiha and the 9 tails both existed now within a separate dimension, sealed by Toby's unique power. He could leave them there indefinitely, or summon Madara and watch the world change forever. To him, the choice was clear. Kamui. A second black orb appeared, and Madara emerged, landing gracefully before him. Toby stared in disbelief. Something was different. The man who stood before him looked remarkably youthful, no older than 30. His long dark hair flowed freely, and he still wore the traditional crimson armor of the Uchiha clan. Yet his presence felt unchanged. "Ha ha! Surprised, Toby?" Madara said with a light-hearted tone, though still powerful and firm. "It's still me. I have subdued the 9 tails, and in doing so, absorbed enough of its energy to revitalize my body. I am whole once more, Madara Uchiha, returned." Toby bowed respectfully, smiling through his tears. His sensei had transcended limitations. This was how Madara would reshape the world, just as he had always claimed. "Master," he said reverently. "I never doubted your plan. I'm honored to have been a part of it." "You no longer need to bow," Madara said, placing a kind hand atop Toby's head. "You are no longer a student, you are my partner. You have stood beside me when others faltered. When I build the world anew, the vision we shared will become reality. You will be a part of it." Toby felt his heart swell with gratitude. All his effort, all the hardship, validated in those words. "Good luck, Madara," Toby said. "The hidden leaf won't stand a chance against your strength and the 9 tails might. I only regret that I can't fight beside you." Madara smiled sincerely. "You've already done more than enough. Rest now. When the time is right, I'll return for you. Together, we will guide the world to true peace." Toby looked up with reverence, listening as his mentor made a vow not of conquest, but of transformation. "Toby," Madara said, turning toward the entrance. His eternal Mangekyo shimmered as he paused. "You and I will bring this world into balance. We will end chaos. We will build a future free of sorrow. I will shape a new era, and you will help me shape it." With those final words, Madara stepped into the shadows, and destiny quietly shifted, signaling a new chapter for the world of shinobi. Konoha, the third Hokage. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had sincerely hoped he would never again need to wear his battle armor. Yet here he stood, fastening the final gauntlet around his wrist as a Leaf Village ninja burst into his office, clearly out of breath. "Lord Third." The ninja gasped, panting as he bowed deeply. "The 9-tailed fox has appeared in the village. It's causing major destruction, and the fourth Hokage hasn't been seen." Hiruzen gave a quiet nod. He had already sensed the powerful and unsettling chakra well before any loud explosion had echoed through the village. He had feared something like this might occur. As he placed his headband firmly on his forehead, he turned to the messenger with a calm but resolute gaze. "I understand. Inform the head ninja to gather all Jonin and Anbu. They are to confront the Nine Tails immediately. Chunin and Jinan are to begin escorting and protecting all civilians without delay. I will head to the scene myself. Go, quickly." "Yes, Lord Hokage." The ninja saluted and dashed off. With practiced agility, Hiruzen leapt through the open window, landing on a nearby rooftop. He scanned the village. The oppressive chakra in the air made it easy to locate the source. It was as if the very atmosphere trembled under the weight of it. As he moved swiftly toward the scene, the gigantic fox-like creature, known as the Nine Tails, sensed his approach and turned to face him. But something caught Hiruzen's eye. Atop the creature's head. Was someone standing there? He narrowed his eyes. Summoning jutsu, "Come forth, great monkey king Enma." Not willing to take any chances, Hiruzen summoned his trusted ally. With a puff of smoke, Enma appeared beside him, his expression immediately turning serious at the sight before him. "Is that the Nine Tails? What's happening, Sarutobi?" Enma asked in astonishment. "The creature is attacking the village, and worse, someone appears to be controlling it," Hiruzen replied, pointing toward the top of the fox's head. "Look closely. You can see someone standing there." As Enma peered into the distance, the figure came into view, calm, confident, and commanding the powerful creature below. Nearby, several brave leaf ninja tried launching attacks at the beast. While a few got close, they were repelled by bursts of powerful jutsu from the mysterious figure above. This chakra, it wasn't just strong, it was darker and more intense than even the Nine Tails itself. "No time to waste, Enma," Hiruzen declared. "Transform now, we have to drive the fox away from the village." "Right. Let's go, Sarutobi." Enma vanished in a cloud of smoke and immediately transformed into his mighty form, the legendary Black Diamond Staff. Hiruzen caught it mid-air, his grip firm. With a shout, he infused it with chakra, causing the staff to stretch rapidly, growing in both size and force. In moments, the massive staff shot forward and struck the Nine Tails with immense power, sending the creature staggering backward, pushed far outside the village's perimeter. A cheer of encouragement arose from nearby leaf shinobi. Moments later, Shikaku Nara, a senior strategist under the 4th Hokage, landed beside Hiruzen. "Lord Third." Shikaku called out. "The upper-ranked ninja are coordinating attacks to keep the Nine Tails outside the village. But the 4th Hokage still hasn't appeared." "Where are you, Minato?" Hiruzen thought, troubled. He knew that Minato had been overseeing Kushina during her childbirth, precisely because the seal that kept the Nine Tails contained within her was at its most vulnerable. Something had gone wrong. Had the person now standing atop the Nine Tails unleashed it? Could they have interfered with the birth and disrupted the seal? Hiruzen wasn't sure, but he was determined to find out, and put a stop to it. With renewed purpose, he surged forward, passing over the village walls toward the Nine Tails once more. Slamming Enma into the ground, he used his chakra to rocket upward, rising higher than the creature's towering form. From this height, perhaps he could strike at the person commanding the Nine Tails directly. But before he could descend, a figure suddenly appeared in midair beneath him, swift, cloaked, and wielding a blade. They struck without hesitation. Hiruzen reacted just in time, swinging Enma to block the attack. The two clashed in midair, and as their eyes locked, Hiruzen's breath caught in his throat. That face. It couldn't be. It looked exactly like Madara Uchiha? It was unthinkable. Madara had vanished from history long ago. And yet, here he was, his presence unmistakable, his Sharingan blazing. Hiruzen quickly looked away, knowing the dangers of falling under the illusion of the Sharingan. But in the moment of distraction, Madara spun with uncanny speed and struck Hiruzen with tremendous force, sending him flying across the forest canopy. Before he could fall far, a fellow leaf ninja intercepted him and gently lowered him to safety. "It's Madara Uchiha," Hiruzen murmured, steadying his breath. "He's somehow returned. And he's behind the Nine Tails release." The Nine Tails roared in the distance, slowly advancing again. They had no choice. Hiruzen began forming hand signs. Summoning jutsu. Before the Nine Tails could reach the village walls, a thick cloud of smoke suddenly erupted in the sky above, revealing a massive toad, Gamabunta, the revered summon of the 4th Hokage. With a thundering impact, the toad landed directly on the creature's path, halting its advance. Standing bravely on Gamabunta's head was none other than the fourth Hokage himself. Relief spread among the shinobi, he was safe. But in an instant, both the fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails vanished in a brilliant flash of golden light. The surrounding ninja cheered prematurely, assuming the danger had passed. However, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, knew better. That was the Flying Thunder God technique, a high-speed teleportation jutsu. But where had the fourth taken the creature? Moments later, a distant explosion shook the land miles away from the village. The shinobi turned in alarm. "Over there," Hiruzen exclaimed, leaping forward beside the head ninja. "Shikaku, gather a team of the most dedicated Anbu. We're heading after the fourth Hokage. I believe I know what he's planning, and I must reach him in time. The rest of you, defend the village." Later. When they arrived at the scene, they were met with a powerful chakra barrier, one so complex that even the most experienced ninja could not pass through. Only the fourth Hokage could have crafted something this advanced alone. Hiruzen and the Anbu raced around the perimeter, finally finding a clearing that allowed them to witness what was taking place within. Inside the barrier, the Nine Tails was held in place by glowing chakra chains, cast by Kushina Uzumaki. Beside her stood Minato Namikaze, his hands moving swiftly through a series of intricate hand signs. "Those signs," Hiruzen whispered in alarm. "He's using a sealing technique, he intends to contain the beast." Energy surged as chakra streamed from the Nine Tails toward Minato, and the creature began to shrink in size, restrained by the chains. After a final surge of power, Minato collapsed from exhaustion. What happened?" Hiruzen murmured, puzzled. He should have sealed the creature completely, was his strength not enough? "Lord Third." One of the Anbu pointed urgently. "Look. In front of the fourth Hokage, there's a child." Through the soft glow of the ritual, Hiruzen could just make out a small infant resting in a protective shrine. The baby had light blonde hair, strikingly similar to Minato's. Hiruzen's eyes widened in realization. That was Minato and Kushina's newborn daughter. She was planning to seal the remaining power within her own child. "Minato, please." Hiruzen called, desperate. "Let me take her place. Don't do this to your daughter. Use me instead." Whether Minato heard him or chose not to respond, he stepped forward and began performing the final seals. Reaper seal. Later. Tears welled in Hiruzen's eyes as he approached the altar. The small child was crying softly, her expression filled with confusion and fear. Naruko, that was the name Minato had chosen for her. The battlefield around them was scorched, and the exhausted forms of Minato and Kushina lay still, a testament to their sacrifice. Yet, there was no sign of the mysterious figure who had unleashed the Nine Tails. How had he managed to escape? Who was he? Hiruzen's thoughts halted as he noticed Naruko's cry slowly fade. He stepped closer and gently examined the intricate sealing mark now etched on her stomach. Something about it was different, more complex than the traditional technique described by Jiraiya. Had Minato made a change? Suddenly, a pulse of chakra radiated from Naruko, unfamiliar and intense, carrying an eerie sense of awareness. Hiruzen froze as he looked into the baby's eyes, now glowing a bright crimson with 3 black tomoe in each iris. The Sharingan. His breath caught. It disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Naruko blinked, and her eyes returned to a soft blue. But it was enough for Hiruzen to realize something deeply unsettling. A presence stronger than the Nine Tails had been sealed within Naruko. And in that moment, a name whispered itself into his mind, Madara Uchiha. Lunchtime. The children at the orphanage cheered joyfully as they rushed out of the playroom, hurrying toward the cafeteria. Lunch was one of their favorite parts of the day, followed by outdoor playtime. Their happy chatter and bright smiles filled the hallways. Everyone seemed excited, everyone except one quiet girl who lingered at the back of the room. Naruko Uzumaki had once been a cheerful child, full of laughter and energy. But over time, the environment around her began to change her. From the earliest days she could remember, the adults treated her with unkindness, and even more troubling, they encouraged the other children to follow their example. Her joy, her laughter, rather than being welcomed, was met with frowns or ignored altogether, as though her happiness somehow bothered others. She never truly understood why she was treated differently. As far as she knew, she had never done anything wrong. Still, misfortune seemed to find her regularly. Earlier that morning, an adult had carelessly spilled hot coffee near her, and while she winced from the sting, the others only laughed. Naruko always did her best to hold back her tears, but sometimes, it was too overwhelming. Not having parents was hard enough, but living in a place where she felt unwelcome made everything harder. Despite the challenges, Naruko never gave up on trying to smile. She held tightly to her positivity, it was her way of staying strong. She wanted to show everyone that no matter what happened, she could still be hopeful. Glancing left and right, Naruko slowly made her way out of the playroom, well behind the others. She carried a small bag on her back, her treasure. Inside were all her belongings, few as they were. She had found the worn-out bag outside one day, forgotten by someone else, and now it served as her safe space. After several incidents where her toothbrush ended up in the toilet or her cherished plush fox was nearly thrown away, she learned it was safer to keep everything close to her. Even at just 4 years old, Naruko had become clever in her own way, independent and aware. The lessons she had learned weren't from books or teachers, but from experience. She poked her head cautiously into the hallway and then walked quietly into the cafeteria. While the other children had meals served to them, Naruko had long ago discovered she needed to get her own food. Too many times she had stood in line only to be handed an empty tray and a scowl. "Why would I serve you food?" the lunch lady had once asked coldly. Naruko never understood the reason, but she had accepted it. So, she adapted. On this day, as she approached the food counter, she noticed something rare. Extra chicken had been left out in the main pot. A soft smile appeared on her face as she reached for the spoon, hoping to enjoy something special for once. Smack! She quickly pulled her small hand back. The lunch lady had appeared behind her and tapped her hand with a large spoon. "That's not for you, little fox," the woman said sharply, as if Naruko had done something wrong. "I'm sorry," Naruko whispered, stepping away and walking to the other side of the counter. She scooped up a portion of soggy rice, which was considered nutritious, even if unappealing. With a small sigh, she walked to her usual seat, a separate, low bench away from the others, and quietly ate by herself. The food never quite filled her up, but she didn't ask for more anymore. The last time she did, it didn't go well. So now, she accepted what she was given, even if it wasn't much. As she stood up to return her tray, someone stuck out a foot and tripped her. She stumbled forward and fell, her tray clattering to the ground. Laughter erupted around the room. Naruko, cheeks flushed, tried to smile and laugh along. She didn't want anyone to see her upset. She picked up the tray quickly and left before her emotions could spill over. Later that day, Naruko sat quietly outside in the orphanage yard, shaded beneath a peaceful tree. Her small bag rested beside her as she watched the other children play soccer. She had tried to join them earlier, but, as usual, they told her to go play somewhere else. It was something she had gotten used to, even if it still stung a little. Rather than dwell on it, she used her time to teach herself new things. She had noticed that older children were being taught how to read and write, and eventually, how to begin early training to become shinobi. Naruko knew she wouldn't be invited to those lessons, so she found another way. One day, she had secretly taken an old scroll and used it to begin learning on her own. While the others studied for just a short while each day, Naruko devoted hours. She knew that if she wanted to succeed, she had to try harder than anyone else. Progress was slow, but she was beginning to understand more. Her eyes were sharp, at least, she thought so, and she had a knack for recognizing patterns, letters, and symbols. With a quiet sigh and a spark of determination, Naruko pulled out the scroll she had borrowed and began reviewing the characters once again. It wasn't the most exciting way to spend the afternoon, but she believed it would pay off. One day, she would show everyone that she could learn and grow, and maybe, just maybe, she would be seen for who she truly was. She didn't have much, but she had hope, and that was enough to keep her going. The next day, evening. Naruko sat quietly beneath her favorite tree, her backpack resting beside her as she ate dinner in solitude. It was her peaceful corner, far enough from the orphanage where no other children played, yet still safely within the high stone walls surrounding the grounds. The village of Konoha, from what she had seen, was truly a beautiful place. The air was pleasant, and the skies were clear. She often wondered if the rest of the village looked just as lovely, although her only glimpse of the outside had been during her short walk back from the hospital once. Even that brief moment felt magical. She pulled out the modest meal she had brought along and picked up her chopsticks. Glancing down at the small plate, she carefully picked up tiny bites of rice, intentionally taking her time in hopes that it would help her feel more full. The day had passed as usual. She had endured a few unkind giggles from the others, but she carried on. She studied alone, ran laps around the grounds for exercise, and stuck to her routine. Each day followed the same pattern, quiet, a little lonely, and sometimes dull, but Naruko remained determined. She believed that one day, things would become more exciting. At the age of 8, children from the orphanage were allowed to attend the academy, a place Naruko had heard whispers about. She understood it to be a school where young students trained to become ninja, warriors who traveled and protected others. The moment she learned that, Naruko set her heart on becoming a ninja too. She also knew the orphanage wouldn't allow her to go unless she proved she could read and showed discipline, so she made a promise to herself. She would train. She would study. She would do whatever it took to make her dream come true. Just then, her thoughts were interrupted. Hey! Naruko's head snapped up, her body tensing out of habit. She had hoped nobody would find her little retreat. She didn't want anyone coming over to tease or mock her. To her surprise, standing in front of her was a girl around her age, with long, dark brown hair and a neat, elegant dress. Her expression wasn't mean or smug like so many others, it was curious, as though she were examining a small, unsure kitten for the first time. Naruko recognized her immediately. She was that girl, one of the most admired children in the orphanage. Everyone treated her like royalty. Why would she want to talk to Naruko? Are you going to say something or just keep staring? The girl asked playfully, tilting her head. I know you know how to talk. I think. Naruko shrugged slightly and turned her attention back to her scroll. Last time she had tried talking to this girl, it hadn't gone well. The adult scolded her, saying someone like her wasn't worthy of speaking to someone so important. Well, you're not very interesting, the girl commented, folding her arms with a frown. That made Naruko look up, annoyed. She'd already endured enough teasing for one day. She didn't need this girl ruining the one place where she felt at peace. Still, she forced a polite smile and replied, I'm sorry I don't know any tricks. You should probably leave before people start saying I gave you cooties or something. The girl scowled and quickly glanced around, making sure no one else saw her. But that's why I came here, she said unexpectedly. Naruko blinked, unsure of what she meant. Everyone says you're a monster. They tell stories about you at night, about things you supposedly did. What? Naruko gasped, her voice rising with frustration. Why would they say that? I've never done anything wrong. Okay, except that one time I threw a tomato at the teacher. But that was just once. The girl giggled and sat down across from her. See? I knew you couldn't have done all those things. You're just like me. We're the same age. Naruko leaned back against the tree, confused and a little hurt. So that's why the other children avoided her? Because the adults told them strange stories? Why would anyone say such things about her? She looked back at the girl. She had expected her to be the one to mock her the most. Was this some kind of trick? So, you don't believe I'm some kind of monster? Naruko asked carefully. The girl nodded with a cheerful grin. Naruko scoffed. Ha! As if. You're just a little princess who believes everything the adults say. The girl's expression shifted into a glare. Oh? So just because I'm treated nicely, you think I'm not smart? She said, placing her hands on her hips. Well, maybe you really are as clueless as people say. That made Naruko stand up, her face flushed with irritation. Me? I'm smarter than you. I've had to teach myself everything. I don't have people catering to me all day. You're just a spoiled princess who's never had to do anything on her own. The girl stepped closer, clearly upset. Well, you're just a big meanie. She shot back. Naruko stepped forward too, her face now just inches away from the girl's. You don't even know me. You're just guessing. You don't know me either. The girl retorted, puffing herself up to seem taller. Naruko frowned, grinding her teeth in frustration. Well, you assumed first. No, you did. The girl countered, glaring. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Just like everyone else. No. I'm not like everyone else. Yeah, you are. No, I'm not. You don't even know me, she shouted, her face turning red from emotion. Their foreheads pressed together as they argued, neither backing down. Then, without warning, the girl stepped back and gave Naruko a push, sending her to the ground. Ha! That's what you get, she said proudly, brushing off her hands and turning around. But suddenly, she was the one on the ground, Naruko standing over her with a smug look. What, you thought I wouldn't push you back? Naruko teased. You really live in your own little world. Just then, the girl lifted the hem of her dress and revealed a scrape on her knee. Naruko's eyes widened. Her playful push had caused a scrape. Oh no, Naruko cried, kneeling beside her in worry. She'd fallen many times before, but this was different. Are you okay? I didn't mean to do that. I'm really sorry. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. You Ruined my dress. And my knee hurts, she said between soft sobs. Naruko froze, heart pounding. She had never meant to hurt anyone. This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to. Really? I just got upset, she said gently, reaching out a hand. Let me help. The girl sniffled but allowed Naruko to help her sit up. Naruko glanced at her scraped knee, trying to think of how to help. She didn't have any bandages or ointment, but maybe she could bring some from the infirmary. I'll make it right, Naruko promised with a soft voice. You're not just some fancy princess. I guess I was wrong about you too. The girl looked at Naruko through teary eyes, and a faint smile began to return to her face. Maybe we both were. And with that, the two girls sat under the tree together, perhaps not quite friends yet, but no longer strangers either. At that moment, Naruko almost considered finding a quiet place to hide and stay there forever. If anyone found out what had happened, she would be so embarrassed. There, Naruko said gently, trying her best to comfort the younger girl in her arms, mimicking what she had once seen an adult do to calm a hurt child. You're going to be just fine. The little girl continued to cry into Naruko's shoulder for a few minutes while she held her softly. Eventually, the tears began to slow, and the girl could breathe normally again, though her breathing remained a bit shaky. I think I'm going to have to go to the hospital, she said dramatically, looking up at Naruko with wide eyes. I don't want anything bad to happen. She had never been hurt like this before and didn't know how to handle the surprise of it all. Naruko quickly shook her head in reassurance. No, it's going to be okay, she said hurriedly, looking around for where she had left her bag. Carefully laying the girl down, Naruko rushed over to her belongings and returned moments later. Here, she said, gently placing the girl's leg on her lap. I think I know how to help. Or at least, this is what I usually do when something like this happens to me. She emptied her bag and found a bottle of water she always carried. She poured a little over the small scrape on the girl's knee, making the girl flinch and grab onto Naruko's arm. Naruko looked at her with concern. This might sting a little, she warned gently. But just try your best to stay still. Taking a clean napkin from her things, Naruko softly pressed it against the scrape to clean and calm the irritated skin. The girl clung to her again and shut her eyes tightly, her cheeks flushing in effort as she tried not to cry again. After a few moments, Naruko pulled the napkin away and smiled slightly when she saw the scrape had already started to look better. Turning to her things, she grabbed the one remaining band-aid, relieved she still had one. Since adults didn't usually give her supplies like these, she had collected a small stash herself. Peeling the band-aid carefully, she placed it gently over the cleaned-up area, causing the girl to gasp quietly again. Once the bandage was in place, Naruko patted her leg softly and adjusted her dress over the knee. You're going to be all right, Naruko said with a soft, slightly nervous smile. The girl slowly sat up across from her. After a quiet moment passed between them, Naruko took a deep breath. I'm really sorry. She finally blurted, looking the girl in the eyes. I didn't mean to push you like that. I mean, I did, but I didn't think you'd actually get hurt. I wasn't trying to upset you, I promise. The girl wiped her face with the back of her hand and gave a quiet laugh at Naruko's flustered honesty. It's okay, she replied eventually, glancing down. I pushed you too. So I guess we're even now, all right? She asked, her expression hopeful. Naruko's eyes brightened with relief, but before reacting, she asked one more question. Are you going to tell on me for this? The girl looked down at her slightly dirty dress and paused, thinking. Naruko started to feel anxious, watching her intently. No, I won't tell, she finally said, glancing away from Naruko's earnest stare. Her own cheeks pinked slightly, unsure why her heart felt a little jumpy. With that, Naruko leapt to her feet, throwing her hands into the air in celebration. Yes, she shouted joyfully, spinning and hopping around her. I'm not in trouble. Her silly celebration made the girl laugh again, and Naruko eventually sat back down beside her under her favorite tree. You were really brave, Naruko told her, offering a warm smile. You handled it like a Heim. At that, the girl frowned and scooted closer to her. I'm not a princess, she declared. Naruko tilted her head and studied her for a second. Yeah, you are, she said playfully. The girl sprang forward and tackled Naruko gently, forgetting all about her dress or her earlier injury, and lightly pinned her down. Who's the princess now? She asked triumphantly, sitting on top of Naruko. Naruko laughed, pretending to struggle. You still are. No way. And you're still such a baka. Nope. You're still a Heim. Why do you think that's a bad thing anyway? Naruko asked curiously. At that question, the girl's playful mood quieted. She looked down at Naruko with a hint of sadness in her eyes. Because I'm not really a princess. If I were, then I'd have a family. No king or queen would leave their daughter in an orphanage, she whispered softly. Naruko gave a thoughtful huff, and the girl looked at her in slight confusion. What does it matter? Naruko said. A lot of people want to adopt you. I overheard the adults saying that the village leaders are still deciding which family gets to bring you home. No one wants to take me in. Not even my parents, I guess, she added in a quieter voice. People say I'm weird or a troublemaker, and I don't even know why. The girl looked at Naruko sadly, realizing that even though she often felt lonely, Naruko had it even harder. Maybe they could be friends. They understood each other in a way no one else really could. Everyone assumes I'm something I'm not, Naruko continued. But I know I'm just like anyone else. I'm normal, just like you. And people think I'm a spoiled princess, the girl replied. But I'm really not. Naruko grinned up at her. I don't think you're spoiled at all. You handled that scrape like a pro. The girl smiled back at her. And I don't think you're silly anymore, she said. You helped me just like a real medic nin. Ding. 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 Children, time to come inside now. A gentle voice called from a distance, just loud enough for the children at the orphanage to hear. A girl stood up from where she had been sitting on Naruko and brushed the dust from her clothes. Naruko did the same. They both understood how particular the caretakers were about punctuality, so they needed to hurry back to the main building. Naruko walked over to her bag and began placing her things inside, and the other girl joined in to help. As she bent down, she picked up a small plush fox with a curious look on her face. It was soft and well loved. What's this? She asked, showing Naruko the toy in her hands. Naruko smiled warmly as she zipped up the rest of her bag and stood up, turning to face her. Oh, that's Kitsune. My fox friend, she said cheerfully. She's been with me for as long as I can remember. The orphanage told me someone left her for me when I was a baby. Kinda strange, right? The girl didn't respond immediately. Naruko's words stayed with her. Everyone in the orphanage knew what it was like to grow up without parents, but to grow up without friends too? That was something else entirely. She thought back to all the times others had teased Naruko or left her out. Even the grown-ups sometimes acted unfairly. Until now, she had never truly considered what life must have felt like from Naruko's perspective. She looked at her and softly asked, "What's your name?" Naruko blinked in surprise, tilting her head. "My name is Naruko Uzumaki," she said proudly, pointing to herself with confidence. "At least, that's what they told me. And you'd better remember it because I'm going to become a great ninja one day." The girl smiled gently, gathering her courage for what she wanted to say next. "Naruko Uzumaki, would you like to be friends with me?" she asked, meeting her gaze sincerely. Naruko's eyes widened in amazement, her grip on her bag almost loosening from the surprise. "Really? Do you mean it?" she asked, barely believing her ears. The girl nodded, her dark brown hair fluttering in the breeze. "Woohoo!" Naruko cheered, leaping into the air with excitement. "Yes. My first real friend." She danced in circles around the giggling girl, overjoyed. As the two of them walked back to the orphanage together, a question popped into Naruko's mind. What's your name?" she asked curiously, realizing she still didn't know. The girl smiled again, and for the first time in her memory, Naruko felt someone smile at her in kindness. "My name is Hinata Senju," she said with a sweet nod. Weeks later, evening. Naruko's bond with Hinata Senju had become the subject of quiet chatter at the Konoha orphanage. Many adults were unsure of how to feel about it. Naruko, sometimes unfairly called the fox child, was now constantly seen with Hinata, the last remaining member of the prestigious Senju family, one of the most honored clans in the village. Ever since Tsunade had left the village, Hinata was viewed as the future of her bloodline. But no one could understand why they were so close. They ate together, played together, and sat together during story time. What baffled the grown-ups even more was that no one dared to act unkindly toward Naruko when Hinata was nearby. Hinata was treated with utmost respect, and the adults didn't want to upset her. After all, she might grow up to lead the Senju clan, and remembering who treated her friends kindly mattered. Far from the main buildings, in their quiet, secret spot under a large tree, the two sat together. Naruko leaned back against the trunk, setting her tray of plain rice mush beside her while she rummaged through her bag for her water bottle. Hinata sat opposite, placing Kitsune beside her. She had become fond of the plush toy and now carried it almost everywhere. Watching Naruko's modest meal, Hinata couldn't help but ask, "Naruko, why do you always eat this? Why don't you get the good food like the others?" Naruko chuckled softly. "The adults don't let me take the other food," she explained with a shrug. "So I just eat this every day. It's not so bad after a while. Unless they make it really weird or super spicy." Hinata frowned slightly. She had thought Naruko just liked that food. It bothered her to realize that Naruko didn't get a choice. Without hesitation, Hinata picked up her own plate and scooped some of her rice and vegetables onto Naruko's tray. "Here," she said kindly. "You can share with me." Naruko's eyes widened in awe as she looked at the colorful food now on her tray. But Hinata, won't you be hungry?" Hinata shook her head with a bright smile. "Nope. I'm happy sharing." After they both clapped their hands and said itadakimasu, Naruko dug in excitedly. She finished her food in a flash, while Hinata was still on her second bite. Watching this, Hinata giggled. "From now on, you can always share mine," she said, clearly pleased with her decision. Naruko blinked in surprise. "But then you'll only have half," she said, concerned. Hinata thought for a moment. "What if tomorrow you try coming with me to get food? They don't act mean when you're with me." Naruko's face lit up with realization. She thought back on all the times she had been treated unfairly, yet none of those moments happened when Hinata was around. "You're right," she said joyfully. "You're like my guardian angel. When you're near, things are just better." Hinata smiled, touched by Naruko's words. Naruko, she realized, was her real friend, someone who liked her just for being herself, not because of her family name. "Hey, Naruko?" Hinata asked after finishing her meal. Naruko was halfway up the tree they loved playing around and looked down at her. "Yeah?" Hinata hesitated, cheeks turning a soft pink. "I was just wondering. Are we best friends? Would you want to be my best friend?" Naruko was so stunned she lost her grip and slipped, landing softly on the ground near Hinata. She hurried over, helping her up. "Are you okay?" she asked, eyes full of concern. Naruko nodded, still slightly dazed, but not from the fall. The warmth in Hinata's question had stunned her more than anything. Naruko had been through a lot in her short life, but looking at Hinata's caring face, she didn't feel any pain. This person truly cared about her. She stood by her, believed in her, and wanted her friendship. Tears gently welled up in Naruko's eyes as she looked at Hinata, who stood bathed in the golden glow of the sunset. To Naruko, she looked almost magical. "Why yeah," she whispered with a smile. "I'd really like that." Months later. Nearly 6 months had passed since Naruko had become close friends with Hinata. The bond between them had blossomed beautifully, growing into something truly unbreakable. No amount of persuasion from adults could ever convince Hinata to distance herself from Naruko, and Naruko felt the same. Just as they had hoped, Naruko was no longer frequently getting into trouble or sustaining injuries, thanks to the gentle but vigilant presence of Hinata. Under the protective gaze of the Senju heiress, no adult dared act unkindly toward Naruko. The two friends were now sitting on the rooftop of the orphanage, enjoying the calming sounds of children playing below while enjoying a quiet moment for themselves. "I'm so tired of being here, Naruko-chan," Hinata sighed, her tone filled with frustration. This wasn't the first time she had voiced such feelings. In fact, her complaints had become routine. "Can you believe they still won't let you train with kunai or study even the simplest scrolls?" Naruko lay back, her eyes gazing up at the clear blue sky. "So?" she responded with a calm shrug. "Most children don't even begin that kind of training until they officially join the academy. That's what they told us, right? And we barely know how to read the scrolls, anyway. What would we even do with them?" Hinata dismissed the reasoning with a small huff, clearly not satisfied. She hugged her favorite stuffed fox to her chest and sat beside Naruko, looking into her best friend's thoughtful blue eyes. Her long dark hair swayed slightly in the breeze, and she pulled her knees to her chest, gently rocking side to side while daydreaming. "I just can't wait until we're both ninja," Hinata whispered with a dreamy smile. "We'll be on the same team, doing missions together, helping people, and we'll finally be out of this place. We'll live in our own apartments, right next to each other, maybe, and we'll be considered adults." Naruko turned her head toward Hinata and offered a soft frown. "That sounds nice," she said with sincerity. "But we both know you'll probably be adopted by some big, well-known clan. And I'll end up in some tiny little apartment all on my own." Hinata immediately shook her head, refusing to accept such an idea. "No way. You'll get adopted too. Maybe we'll even be adopted by the same family. Naruko smiled faintly but shook her head again. Even at her age, she understood how things worked. They don't like me, Hinata-chan, she said quietly. They probably wouldn't even want me sweeping their floors, let alone living under the same roof as you. Hinata lay down beside Naruko and looked up at the sky with her. Well, we can still wish, right? Naruko shrugged, trying not to let her hopes rise too much. The idea of being separated from the one person who had always treated her kindly left a knot in her chest. She wasn't naive, she knew the village adored Hinata and often avoided her. It was like trying to bring light and shadow together, beautiful, but impossible. All we can do is enjoy the time we have now, Naruko said gently. Because you might be adopted any day. Hinata shut her eyes tightly, trying not to let tears fall, and held Naruko's hand with all her strength. Don't say that, she whispered, her voice trembling. She held Naruko's arm close, as though she feared she might disappear at any moment. Naruko smiled at her, eyes filled with warmth. She laughed softly, and Hinata couldn't help but giggle in return. She always found comfort in Naruko's laugh. Come on, Hinata-hime, Naruko said with a bright grin, don't be so dramatic. If anyone even tries to take you away, they'll have to get through me first. Hinata smiled and nestled close to her best friend, appreciating the reassurance and the warmth that came with it. If only they could stay together forever. It didn't matter where they were, as long as they had each other. Later that night. The Hokage sighed deeply, rubbing the bridge of his nose as the last of the council members entered the chamber. The clan heads took their seats, all holding themselves with a sense of importance. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Though this was the third such meeting regarding Hinata's future, a final decision had yet to be reached. Everyone is present, Hiruzen began, his voice steady and formal. Let us begin the meeting. The purpose, as you are aware, is to determine which noble clan will adopt Miss Hinata Senju until she is old enough to establish her own clan. The room immediately burst into voices, each clan head eager to present their case. Hiruzen, however, would not allow the conversation to spiral into chaos. Silence, he commanded firmly. The room quieted at once. We will conduct this discussion with the dignity and order expected of our village's leaders. Let it be clear, Hinata Senju is the legacy of the Senju clan, and it is our duty to guide her so she may someday restore the will of fire that once strengthened this village. Only a prominent and honorable ninja clan will be considered. There will be no exceptions. A few murmurs of protest echoed from the civilian council members, but the majority nodded in agreement. We will begin with your proposal, Sume Inuzuka. The Inuzuka clan leader stood confidently. Hinata would thrive with us. Our clan believes in unity, loyalty, and raising all members as family. We would nurture her well and teach her to lead with strength and compassion. Before she could continue, Shikaku Nara interrupted calmly, and benefit from her status and inheritance in return. His statement earned a few gasps and narrowed eyes. Shikaku continued, let's be honest, this is less about Hinata's well-being and more about gaining political and social leverage. Please, allow others to speak without interruption, the Hokage said with measured disapproval, though he didn't entirely disagree. Choza, Hiruzen continued, what is your opinion? The Akimichi clan leader rose slowly. I believe placing her in one of the larger clans would be a mistake. It may result in her being molded too heavily into that clan's identity, diminishing the legacy she carries. It would be wiser for her to be trained privately or placed with a neutral clan, one that values balance, such as the Nara. Hiruzen nodded thoughtfully and turned to the Aburame leader. Shibi? Remaining seated, Shibi adjusted his dark glasses. I support Choza's viewpoint. However, this meeting feels more like a stage play than a genuine decision-making session. In truth, this matter will come down to a decision between the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. It would be most efficient to allow them to present their positions. With that, the room grew tense. Hiruzen turned to Hyashi Hyuga. Hyashi, your thoughts? Hyashi stood gracefully, his robes flowing as he addressed the council. The bond between the Senju and the Hyuga has always been one of respect. Our clans have never been rivals, rather, we have stood beside each other since the village's founding. Entrusting Hinata Senju to the Hyuga would be honoring that legacy. We would ensure she is trained with the dignity and guidance worthy of her heritage. His speech was met with nods of approval and quiet clapping from the civilian members. Hiruzen turned finally to Fugaku Uchiha. Fugaku? To everyone's surprise, the Uchiha leader rose and simply said, I agree with Hyashi. The Hyuga clan is the proper home for Hinata Senju. The council chamber fell silent in disbelief. You are certain? The Hokage asked. Fugaku gave a single nod. I am. The Hokage paused, then addressed the room. Does the council agree with this resolution? The majority raised their hands or voiced their consent. Then it is settled, Hiruzen declared. Hinata Senju will be formally adopted by the Hyuga clan, where she will be raised and trained until she is ready to revive her own clan. Now all that remained was the completion of the official paperwork, but a major decision had finally been made. The next morning, Naruko yawned as she sleepily made her way to the cafeteria, her golden hair still tousled from sleep. Students shuffled into the large room alongside her, no longer giving her unkind glances. After all the time she had spent with Hinata, they had learned better. No one wanted to upset the strong-willed Senju girl. She picked up a tray and quietly took a seat at the far end of the spacious hall, settling at a table by herself. She wasn't really hungry yet and figured she'd wait until. Just then, a slightly drowsy Hinata Senju entered the cafeteria with a few girls her age, tightly hugging her beloved plush fox, Kitsune. The moment she spotted Naruko sitting alone, her face lit up. She gently slipped away from her group and made her way over with a cheerful smile. Good morning, Naruko-chan. She greeted warmly, sitting beside her and placing Kitsune on the table. Did you already eat? She asked, noticing the empty tray in front of her. Naruko smiled and shrugged slightly, glancing away as she replied honestly. No. I wanted to wait for you first. Hinata's smile widened, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. Naruko always thought of her, it made her heart feel light and joyful. Truly, she was her best friend. The two girls got up to select their breakfast together and returned shortly to enjoy their meal. Once finished, they tidied up their trays and sat down again, considering what to do with the rest of their Saturday. So, what should we do next, Hinata-chan? Naruko asked playfully. Saturdays were relaxed at the orphanage. The children had the freedom to do as they pleased, so long as they stayed inside the grounds. Leaving the compound wasn't allowed until they turned 8, and for them, that milestone still felt far away. I'm not sure, Hinata answered thoughtfully. How about we go up to the roof and think about it from there? Naruko didn't need to hear anything else. Before Hinata could even finish her sentence, Naruko was already holding her hand and leading her outside. They darted through the courtyard and, once the coast was clear, climbed the sturdy old tree growing beside the main building. Naruko had discovered a while back that the tree's low and wide branches made it perfect for climbing. Even more exciting, its limbs stretched right over the rooftop. After convincing a hesitant Hinata that it was safe, the two girls had made it their secret hangout spot. It had quickly become their favorite adventure, sneaking up to the roof and enjoying the view. They walked along the rooftop until they reached the corner that gave them the clearest look beyond the orphanage walls, offering a peek at the village outside. This view never gets old, Naruko said quietly, sitting beside Hinata. Hinata nodded in agreement, her eyes sparkling with wonder. Yeah. I can't wait until the day we can go out there together. We'll go to the academy, explore the village, play in the parks, and find hidden spots no one knows about. Naruko felt the same. She longed to share those adventures with Hinata. But the thought that they still had years to wait, and the chance that Hinata might get adopted before then, made her heart ache. What if they didn't get to explore together? Suddenly, a spark of inspiration lit up in Naruko's eyes. She gently nudged Hinata's arm, who was still lost in her daydream. Eh? Hinata looked over at her, curious. Naruko pointed toward a different part of the rooftop. Hinata followed her gaze, frowning in confusion. It's just another tree, she said softly. Look where it leads, Naruko urged. Hinata leaned forward, tracing the path of the thick branch that extended far beyond the wall. Just barely, she could make out the rooftop of a house outside the compound. Her eyes widened. You're not thinking. It's our way out, Naruko whispered excitedly. We can walk across the branch and land on that roof. Hinata's breath caught. But Naruko, that's against the rules, she whispered back, clearly anxious. Everyone knew children under 8 weren't allowed outside. There was always someone at the front gate, making sure of it. We won't get caught, Naruko insisted with a quiet grin. We can go explore and be back before anyone even notices we're gone. Hinata hesitated, shifting nervously. I don't know, Naruko-chan. What if we get in big trouble? She wasn't worried about herself. What concerned her most was Naruko. If anyone found out she had gone out, she didn't want to imagine the consequences. Seeing her friend's worry, Naruko gently took her hands and looked into her eyes. Trust me, Hina-chan. I'll be fine. It's Saturday, and they don't check on us until dinner time. Hinata turned away, cheeks pink from the intensity of Naruko's gaze. I know I won't be in trouble. I'm worried about you, Naruko-chan. Naruko was touched. No matter how much time they spent together, she was always moved by Hinata's genuine care. It made her heart feel warm. Don't worry about me, Naruko said with a comforting smile. I'll be okay as long as we're together. You're my guardian angel, remember? Hinata looked down, torn between her caution and her desire to share something special with her best friend. Naruko noticed the inner struggle and added one more heartfelt plea. Think about it, Hinata. We don't know how much time we'll have here together. Let's make the most of every moment we can. That did it. Hinata stood up with a look of quiet determination. Are you with me, Hinata-chan? Naruko asked, rising to her feet with excitement. Hi. Hinata responded with a confident nod, a playful glint in her eyes. Naruko gave a little cheer, punching the air in silent celebration, which made Hinata giggle softly. Then let's go. Together, they cautiously balanced across the sturdy tree branch, hidden by the thick canopy of leaves. When they reached the end of the branch, they looked down and saw the rooftop below. It wasn't far at all, only a few feet down. Naruko jumped first and landed smoothly. Hinata followed right after, landing beside her. Their hearts were racing, not with fear, but with exhilaration. We're really out, Naruko whispered, glancing back at the top of the orphanage wall. We actually did it. She grabbed Hinata's hand, and the two of them made their way to the edge of the roof. Below was a large bin placed conveniently close. With a quick hop, they dropped onto it and then safely down to the ground. Standing in the narrow alley, they looked out toward the open village. Streets stretched ahead, filled with possibilities, shops, trees, playgrounds, hidden corners. An entire world waiting for them. No time to waste, Naruko said with a huge smile. Let's go. And hand in hand, the two best friends ran forward into their long-awaited adventure. Yahiko. What should I do? 15-year-old Yahiko stood in the middle of the pouring rain, breathless, eyes wide as he looked at his best friend, Nagato. The tension around them felt as heavy as the thunderclouds above. Yahiko's hand trembled as he clutched a kunai, his mind torn between impossible choices. Don't listen to them. Came the urgent voice of Konan, her eyes filled with concern. She was being restrained by Hanzo, the leader of the village hidden in rain, who had deceived them. Konan knelt on a hill above, struggling against the hold of their captors. Forget about me. You two must escape. Surrounded by Hanzo's forces and operatives from the Root Division, Yahiko felt the pressure of protecting his friends and followers. Hanzo, seeing them as a threat, had cornered them through a false agreement. Now, a cruel ultimatum hung in the air. Yahiko. Nagato called, his voice snapping Yahiko back to the present. Trust yourself. No. Don't. Konan's voice rang out again, desperate. Make your decision, Hanzo declared from his position, glaring down at Yahiko. Or this young lady suffers the consequences. Yahiko was frozen in conflict, the choice unbearable. How could he choose between his two closest friends? Without warning, Nagato surged forward, determination blazing in his eyes. Yahiko instinctively recognized what was happening through the unique vision granted to him. Nagato wasn't going to let Yahiko make the choice. In a swift motion, Nagato grabbed Yahiko's wrist and pushed the kunai into himself. Yahiko gasped, wide-eyed, stunned into stillness by the act. His friend leaned in close, whispering with a calm, reassuring voice. You and Konan. You have to go on. You can bring real change. You have that power. I believe in you. As Yahiko caught his friend, he felt the words echo inside him, resonating in his heart. Nagato, Konan cried, her eyes overflowing as she watched from above. Tears traced down Yahiko's cheeks as his mind reeled. He had only ever wanted to protect the people he cared about. He hadn't asked for leadership or power. Just peace. If peace cannot come naturally, he thought to himself, then I will guide this world with unwavering resolve. Suddenly, a barrage of kunai flew down from the hilltop. Hanzo had ordered his forces to eliminate everyone. But Yahiko raised his hand calmly, and a surge of powerful energy erupted from him, scattering the incoming weapons harmlessly in all directions. He stopped them? Hanzo said in disbelief. What power is this? Before Hanzo could act further, Yahiko appeared in a flash beside Konan, gently helping her to her feet. Hanzo tried to back away, but before he could make a move, glowing tags burst up from the ground, surrounding the area. A brilliant explosion of light and energy filled the air, disrupting everything around. Dust and smoke blanketed the field. Hanzo shielded his eyes, trying to assess the outcome. Did I stop them? He murmured. As the air cleared, Yahiko stood protectively in front of Konan. Though slightly bruised, they were safe. Konan clutched Yahiko's sleeve. Yahiko, she cried. Stay with Nagato, Yahiko told her, his voice steady but soft. Konan nodded silently, tears falling as she looked at the one they had lost. Yahiko stepped forward with purpose, his eyes unwavering, radiating calm strength. His gaze fixed on Hanzo, who took an uneasy step back. Impressive, Hanzo said, regaining composure. You're still standing after all that. Those eyes of yours. They are truly extraordinary. Looking over his forces and the remaining root members, Hanzo gave one final command. Capture them all. Dash. Konoha, a day to remember. Naruko held Hinata's hand gently as they returned to the alley where their small adventure had begun. Even though they were just 4 years old, the day had been filled with laughter, wonder, and the feeling of freedom. They had spent hours exploring the village of Konoha, pretending to be brave travelers on a journey. For Naruko, the highlight of the day was when they stumbled upon a cozy ramen bar. Drawn by the delicious scent, they peeked inside. The kind-hearted owner had noticed their excitement and offered them each a warm bowl of ramen, completely free. Hinata's favorite moment came later, when Naruko had discovered a long staircase leading up the side of a mountain. The climb was long, but the view from the top was breathtaking. Together, they looked out over the entire village, the rooftops, the busy streets, the peaceful forest that stretched beyond the gates. It was like standing on top of the world. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in soft colors, they made their way back, still hand in hand, making sure not to lose each other in the growing evening crowd. There's the dumpster, Naruko said excitedly, pointing toward the one they had used earlier to climb into the alley behind the orphanage. Naruko climbed up first, then reached back to help Hinata, who was still hugging her little fox doll. Once over the wall, they carefully balanced on a tree branch that stretched across to the academy roof. It was their secret shortcut, and it worked every time. Just as they landed softly on the rooftop, they heard a familiar voice calling out below. Dinner. Everyone back for dinner. They paused, catching their breath, eyes wide with joy. They had made it back just in time, and no one had caught them. Naruko looked at Hinata, and Hinata looked back, and then both burst out laughing, overwhelmed with happiness from their secret adventure. That night, as they lay in bed at the orphanage, they thought about the incredible day they'd spent together. The view from the mountain, the kindness of strangers, the joy of exploring. Moments that would become treasured memories for years to come. Together. The next morning, Naruko awoke with a bright smile, her dreams still lingering, joyful images of her and Hinata spending weekends together, exploring and laughing. Filled with excitement, she jumped out of bed and quickly straightened her sheets before jogging down the hallway toward the cafeteria. Sundays were calm, just like Saturdays, and Naruko hoped that today would offer another chance to share time with her best friend. Her cheerful pace slowed as she heard quiet voices nearby. Curious, she moved closer to a group of girls gathered in the hallway, whispering about something that sounded serious. Did you hear? One of them said in a hushed tone, just loud enough for Naruko to catch. Yeah. I can't believe she was finally adopted. Naruko's heart skipped a beat. She froze, trying to keep herself calm. She needed more information, jumping to conclusions wouldn't help. I know, right? I guess that means she'll be alone again. Naruko's chest tightened. The words echoed in her ears as she suddenly turned and sprinted down the hallway, her legs barely keeping up with her thoughts. There was no way Hinata could be gone. She burst into the cafeteria, drawing surprised looks from everyone inside, but she didn't care. Her eyes scanned the room for Hinata, her closest friend, her light, but she was nowhere to be found. Without a second thought, Naruko darted through the halls of the orphanage, ignoring the staff calling after her. She made her way to the girls' dormitories, an area she wasn't supposed to enter, but rules didn't matter right now. As she reached Hinata's room, she flung the door open. The bed was empty, perfectly made. Resting on the pillow was Kitsune, Hinata's favorite fox plush, something she never left behind. That single image made Naruko's heart ache with a deep sadness. Clutching the plush toy, she dashed toward the front of the building, her eyes filled with tears. As she reached the entryway, she noticed a group of unfamiliar adults dressed in flowing white robes speaking with the head of the orphanage. Carefully, Naruko pressed herself against the wall and listened. Do you have the paperwork? One asked. Yes, everything is in order. Naruko held her breath. Footsteps approached, followed by a gentle voice. Why yes, I'm ready. That voice, it was Hinata. Naruko's heart sank. Forgetting everything, she rushed out into the hallway. Her eyes locked with Hinata's as she walked hand in hand with a robed man. Hinata turned her head, eyes wide with emotion. Hinata. Wait. Naruko called, her voice trembling with emotion. The adults turned, startled. The man holding Hinata's hand frowned, clearly displeased by the interruption. What is she doing here? He said with a sigh. The head of the orphanage gave an awkward smile. The Hokage insisted we care for her, but... I'm not interested in excuses, the man interrupted sharply. This is a special day for my family. Let's keep it that way. Hinata looked back once more, her gaze silently pleading. One of the caretakers approached Naruko and gently tried to guide her away. You need to go back to your room, Naruko. But Naruko didn't move. Instead, she took a breath and rushed forward. In that instant, she reached Hinata and wrapped her arms around her in a tight, heartfelt embrace. I'll never forget you, she whispered, placing the fox plush into Hinata's hands. Hinata clutched the toy and whispered back, I won't forget you either, Naruko. Before anything more could be said, the adults separated them. Hinata looked back one last time, her eyes filled with tears, and Naruko managed a small, trembling smile. I'll never forget you. Later that day. Naruko sat quietly on her bed, her belongings packed into a small bag. The head of the orphanage had told her earlier, her time there was over. Though the sun was still rising, it already felt like the hardest day of her life. She gently touched the corner of her pillow, remembering the laughter she had shared with Hinata over the past few months. Despite the many difficult days before, Hinata's friendship had brought light to even the darkest moments. When the head of the orphanage returned, he didn't say much. He simply took her by the hand and led her through the building, out toward the front gate. Naruko followed quietly, the plush memory of Hinata still warm in her heart. As the gates opened, she stepped outside for the first time, seeing the village of Konoha from a new angle. The world felt big. Uncertain. But something inside her whispered that this wasn't the end, just a new beginning. As she turned to glance back one final time, Naruko thought she saw something, perhaps a memory, or perhaps hope itself, of Hinata waving from the rooftop above. Then the gate slowly shut behind her. That's a wrap for now, fellow explorers of the digital realm. If you enjoyed the content, initiate the like, share, and subscribe protocols to stay synced with future uploads. Your support powers this channel's evolution. Transmission complete. Satellite emoji, with gratitude. 6 Path Weeb, logging off.